Okay, hello everybody. Today we're here at Miami Opa Locka Executive. We have an 81 nautical mile flight to Witham. We'll be using a VFR flyway to transition Fort Lauderdale's Class Charlie to the north, and we'll be flying in virtual reality. As an added bonus, I'll tell you a little bit about my real-life flight lesson from this past weekend that I gave you a preview of in my last video. So let's hop into the pilot seat and get started. Alright, we are here in 80271. This is the recreation of the Cessna that I've done my flight lessons in at my flight school. So we'll start by getting the battery on. Beacon is on. We'll get the fuel shutoff valve open. We'll crack the throttle. We've got the mixture to full rich. We'll head over here, check the fuel quantity. That looks good. I should have done that first. Then we'll head down here and get the fuel pump on. Give that 3 to 5 seconds. Then we'll turn the fuel pump off and lean the mixture. Check outside, clear prop. And let's put the parking brake on. I've got my rudder pedals, but it never hurts. All right. See if I could grab the key here, and ignition. Now we'll get the mixture in, and we are good. Alright, we'll head over here and get the alternator on. There we go. Now in real life I've been told to always turn both on at the same time, but I'm following the checklist in the game here. Alright, as we get everything else turned on, I will take you through the flight brief. We have a mess of airspaces because it's Southeast Florida, so we are departing from a Class Delta that's underneath the Bravo of Miami, directly south of the Charlie of Fort Lauderdale. We'll be using a flyway to do the Fort Lauderdale overhead transition, so we will be cutting through Class Charlie airspace, and we do need to talk to ATC and get clearance to do that, but this is a pre-canned route to cross over the field. Since we're heading north, we'll cross the east side of the field and follow US 1. On departure, we'll get dumped out directly over to Class Delta's. Pompano Beach is the one that will let us know that we are outside of the Class Charlie. We'll continue to climb up to 4,500. That'll let us fly over the Class Charlie of Palm Beach, and then we'll descend for approach to Witham. Fort Lauderdale ground, Cessna 80471, request north departure for Fort Lauderdale overhead transition with information India. Squawk 2313, and we are at Endeavour and ready to taxi. Taxi and hold shore, runway 27 right via Echo, November 8, Cessna 80471. Alright, this is interesting. So we are taking off from a Delta underneath the Bravo, and then we've got another Delta between us and Fort Lauderdale. So Opa Locka Tower is going to hand us off to Perry Tower, which is the other Delta, and then Perry Tower will hand us off to Fort Lauderdale Tower, which is the Charlie. There's no approach because the Delta goes right up to Tower's airspace. This is a freeware airport I got from flightsim.to. Check the video details if you would like to download it. I am continuing to use my rudder pedals here, and I'm very slowly getting the hang of them. It also helped that I adjusted the sensitivity. I think out of the box they were too sensitive, and adding a bit of a dead zone in the middle helped them not be hyperactive. There's some nice custom modeling here for this freeware airport. Check out the structure up on the right. Alright, we'll stop here at the hold short line and get everything set up. Opa Locka Tower, Cessna 80471, holding short, runway 27 right. On departure, fly heading 060, maintain VFR at or below 2,400, cleared for departure, runway 27 right, Cessna 80471. Alright, game on. Okay, while we're doing the rollout, I'll tell you about my flight lesson. So in my last video, I showed you my bag of goodies that I got for my first flight lesson, which was a giant box of books that will be my study material. And I have to admit, I was a little gung-ho and burnt out at the same time from the past week or so, which has just been a flurry of activity to get things started with my lessons. So I've been trying to work my way steadily through my online ground school, which is King's, and I'm a little more than a third of the way through. And now I've got homework from my flight instructor from one of the books I got, which is overlapping with the content of the ground school. The first chapter and lesson in the book is kind of what you expect. These are the parts of an airplane. Here's how they work. Here's the 4 forces that act upon your airplane. Here's what happens when you turn. Here's how the wind flows over the wing. Here's how the ailerons interact and the flaps interact, and it was really gut-wrenching detail. I guess that's not a surprise, but I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, and it really felt like studying an engineering textbook. You know, it's got vector diagrams, and it's talking about laminar flow for the wind over the wing and boundary layers, and this is like exactly the stuff that I studied in school. So that was kind of cool. But it was also surprisingly technical. Okay, switching back to the flight, I need to get beyond the end of the threshold of the runway and at least 400 feet before making any turns. Somewhere around 1,000 feet or so, I'm going to get the tower calling me and saying radar contacts say altitude. So I'll tell them my altitude, and they'll verify that what I say matches what my Mode C transponder is reporting. So here we are, we're good, we hit the end. We're going to initiate our turn to 060. I love doing turns in VR, it's so cool to be able to turn your head and look around and look over your shoulder. And if you didn't catch my video where I talked about my discovery flight, it's one of the things that really translates. It really does. It translates very well from the simulator to actually flying a Cessna. So I found that making turns in the Cessna in real life really felt like what I'm doing right here, and I think that virtual reality in particular helped me with flight simming, be able to do my turns more easily on my discovery flight. Alright, we're going to hold this heading and continue our climb. At some point between here and US Route 1, Opa Locka Tower is going to hand us off to North Perry Tower because we're going to move into their airspace. So they'll say, you know, contact North Perry Tower on the tower frequency, and I'll say over to that frequency, switch over, and then they'll give me further instruction and then hand me off to Fort Lauderdale Tower. Okay, we are chatting with North Perry Tower now, and we are approaching US 1, so that's just off to my nose on the left-hand side here. There it is. So as soon as we reach it, we're going to turn left and follow it north. And you can see Fort Lauderdale off my left wing there. It's that white patch that the road leads right to. So here Perry would hand me off to Fort Lauderdale Tower. I'd contact them. They would know already that I'm doing the overhead transition, and they would instruct me to maintain 2,500, follow US Route 1. So as we make our turn here, I'll tell you more about my first lesson. So the weather here has been just one rain cloud for the past month, and it's been challenging trying to find days to do flights on. I'd scheduled my first lesson on Saturday, last Saturday, about a week and a half in advance, and I just kind of hoped the weather would work out, but you know, sure enough, I'd been watching the forecast all week, and it was looking dicey, and I got a text from my flight instructor on the morning of my flight saying, you know, weather's no good for flying, but there's still plenty we can do on the ground. So I came over, and we spent the entire time doing groundwork. And it was my first lesson, so a lot of it was setup. You know, we covered the syllabus. The flight school has a syllabus and structure to it. So, you know, a lot of this was sitting down in the office and talking, going through all the other setup stuff that we needed, like my student pilot application and my Class 3 medical setup, and, you know, everything that I needed to do, including the big box of books that I got. Then we shifted gears and we went to the hangar. So one of the nice things about my flight school is they're able to keep all of their airplanes, all of their rental airplanes, in a really big hangar. So even though it was raining outside and kind of bad weather, we were nice and dry inside of the hangar. So we did groundwork with the plane. You know, we did the full pre-flight, the inspection of the airplane. We had the same plane that I used for my discovery flight. This time we were in a lot more detail than we did on my discovery flight. So instead of just ticking the box for required documents are on board, we got every one of those documents and we looked at what's on them. Here's the airworthiness certificate. Here's the content that's on it. Here's what that means. Here's the maintenance log. You know, here's how to read it. Here's, you know, where the pilot's operating handbook is. So we went through all of those, and then, you know, we did the walk around using the checklist, and we did a lot more detail than my discovery flight. I got to put my hand on the aircraft and really feel what he was talking about when we did the, you know, the pre-flight the last time. You know, for instance, you inspect the prop for damage by visually looking at it and also touching it with your hand. And, you know, I felt the spot. He kind of guided me to the one spot where a small ding had been smoothed and ground out on the prop. So after we got done with the pre-flight and shut everything back down, then we went back to the office and worked on the schedule, talked about how often I would do lessons, things like that. Switching back to our flight, we are just passing over Pompano Beach Air Park, which means we are outside of the Class Charlie airspace. So now we are free to maneuver. We're going to head over here to the shoreline and enjoy a nice beachfront view following the coast. Okay, we're passing by Palm Beach Air Park, which is underneath the Class Charlie of Palm Beach. We are flying over the Class Charlie of Palm Beach though, so no worries for us. And just out our left window here, we've got Palm Beach International. Once we get clear of the Class Charlie, then we'll begin our descent for Witham Field. We'll need to contact them since they're a towered field and they'll tell us how to approach, but based on the current winds, I'm expecting to get instructed to enter a left downwind for runway 30 and report midfield. In virtual reality, this just looks fantastic, and as I'm editing it and watching it in 2D, I hate to say it, but it really loses something, and I know you're not getting the full effect that I had when I saw this, but when I look down at this golf course here, you know, it was huge. Everything is 1-to-1 size, so the landscape is life-size. So things look so huge and big and just real life-sized in VR, and when I see it in 2D here, it kind of looks like small houses and stuff like that, but it was just like a totally different experience. I remember looking down here and thinking, this looks like a cool place to live. Alright, we're now on our approach to Witham Field, and I've got a pretty good idea that that's the field up ahead. I can't quite see it. One of the downsides of VR, detail really drops off in the distance, but I know it's there. So we're going to start situating ourselves to make a left downwind entry on a 45. So I'm going to turn left here, head west beyond the field, and then turn around and come back in for my pattern entry. Alright, I think this is going to be a really cool approach because the runway runs out towards the water, So we're going to fly out towards the water and then come in from the shoreline to runway 30. And there it is, we've got the field off our left. It's halfway up the strut, exactly where we want it. We are at pattern altitude. Get ourselves all lined up here and roll on out. And here's where we'd call the tower and announce November 80471 midfield for runway 30. They give us a clear to land. The photogrammetry looks really good here, and I could even see that there's some boats out in the water. This looks gorgeous in VR. So I'm going to let the entire approach play here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my flight lessons. Guess what? You're going to hear a lot about these over the next year or however long it takes me to get through them. But so my next lesson is this Saturday. It's actually a double, so I've got an hour and a half of groundwork and then hopefully an hour and a half of flight time. Looks pretty good. And you know, I'm hoping we'll get to fly almost that entire hour and a half, because we'll probably do the pre-flight and the prep work as part of the groundwork. I've got my Class 3 physical tomorrow. A little nervous, you know, I'm in good health, so I don't really think I have anything to worry about, but you never quite know what they're going to look for. My David Clark headset finally arrived after traversing the continental United States. I think I'm spoiled by always ordering things off Amazon where it just shows up the next day or 2 days later. So this went UPS ground from the western side of the US to the eastern side of the US, and I was watching it very, very slowly progress. So it showed up the day after my flight lesson, but I'll have it for my next one. And it's great. I was playing around with it. It's really comfortable. Well, at least it's really comfortable when I wear it for 5 minutes. I'm sure when I get into a longer flight that I have to wear it for a while, I won't be saying that, but I like it. I bought the bag for it, and I'm going to use that, I think initially as my flight bag, so I'll put my pilot's logbook. It's got a nice zippered pouch on the front, and some other things in the front. Keep the headset in, and just take that to the flight school with me. At some point I'm sure I'll need to actually get a flight bag when I have to lug around some more stuff, but for now I really don't have any stuff. I just have the headset and my pilot log, at least for these initial lessons. Alright, so we are lined up pretty well here on centerline. We've got a good approach rate coming in. This looked gorgeous. I'm a bit off centerline. Let's fly over here to the left. Speed is 70. And I'm not aiming for the numbers. I'm aiming for these white bars straight ahead of me. And a little too much energy. There we go. And I remembered my rudder pedals this time. The last two flights I completely forgot using the rudder pedals. And that worked out pretty well. So now we get a little bit more practice taxiing with my rudder pedals. I'm curious, since I've used these so much the past 2 weeks, if it's going to help when I taxi in the real plane again this Saturday. I hope it does. And, you know, I mentioned they're different. The flight sim rudder pedals skate up and down, and real rudder pedals you push down with your feet. Alright, we'll get everything shut down here. Alright, another virtual reality flight. I managed to trim this one down to 22 minutes. There's definitely an art to editing VR flights. I find they're much harder to edit than the 2D flights I do, where I can do a nice exterior montage set to music. So it also involves me talking a lot more, but I think that kind of works with the flight sim updates. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to click that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.